Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guest is Mike Schade. And Mike is the lead for Toxic Free Futures Mind the Store program, and which is challenging retailers to shift the marketplace away from hazardous chemicals and develop a comprehensive, safer chemical policy. Mike, hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you joined. And I've been following you on LinkedIn and all the good work you're doing about trying to raise awareness of PFAS and retailer products. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on the show and talk about, the good things you guys are trying to do and accomplish with, working with these retailers. So, give us a little bit of some background for our listeners about, the mission of the Toxic Free Future and your role as the director for Mind the Store.
Yeah, so TFF, we're a national environmental health nonprofit. We've been around for more than 40 years. We started working in Seattle locally to protect folks from exposure to harmful pesticides and herbicides. And over the years, we've really expanded our mission to protect American families more broadly from exposure to dangerous chemicals that are used in consumer products, packaging, and can be found throughout global supply chains. We work to advance policies at the state level and the federal level to more tightly regulate dangerous chemicals like PFAS and phthalates. And we also work to advance comprehensive corporate chemical policies among the nation's leading retailers through our Mind the Store program, which is a program that I coordinate. Additionally, we also conduct original research into chemicals of concern. And, across the board, our mission is really to protect American communities, families, workers from exposure to dangerous chemicals that are hiding all around us every day, from food packaging to building materials to electronics, and really to prevent harm from chemicals that are linked to cancer and other serious health problems in our communities.
So essentially, us consumers should be very thankful that you're helping prevent these chemicals from coming into our possession. That's great. Unknowingly, right? Yeah, I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, day in and day out, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you wash your hair. Just, those acts alone, you're being exposed to chemicals unwittingly, from products like cosmetics to shampoo. Put on your clothes. You could be exposed to chemicals like PFAS in your clothing. You lay on the couch, you could be exposed to flame retardants. So dangerous chemicals are hiding all around us. And, we think that businesses and policymakers really need to do a much better job of protecting our families from exposure to chemicals that independent scientists are sounding the alarm on, that they're saying are linked to serious health problems like cancer.
Yeah, I mean, some of these chemicals have kind of flown under the radar as far as their toxicity, the regulatory nature of them. They're typically in products, there is some sort of material, MSDS, safety data sheet that's associated with it. But, I think there's a lot of things hiding in those that people don't understand the risks as well. So, I think it's good that you guys are taking a look at this and trying to protect the consumers. Well, let's talk a little bit about Mind the Store and its market transformation program. How does that work? Because I was looking on your website and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, the fundamental idea behind the Mind the Store program is that, we think that retailers have a fundamental responsibility to ensure that the products and the packaging that they use and sell are safe and healthy, not only for we as consumers, but also for the communities and the workers where products and materials are manufactured and where they're disposed of. We as consumers have little to no influence over big chemical corporations that manufacture chemicals that can be harmful for our health and environment, but we have a lot of influence over the companies that we shop at, that we spend money at. And increasingly, companies care what their customers think. They want to know that their customers are happy. So we launched the Mind the Store program about 10 years ago to challenge the nation's biggest retailers companies like Walmart, Amazon, Target, Home Depot, to leverage their market power and influence to drive dangerous chemicals out of their products, packaging, and supply chains. We think that retailers can really be a force for good in terms of protecting consumers and communities from chemicals in the products that they sell. Most retailers don't want to sell products that contain chemicals that can be harmful to their customers, or that can pose business risks to them as a company.
Right, right. So, you know, right before we jumped on this call, you kind of had some really great news that came through today, which I'm imagining is kind of related to this market transformation program that you're working with retailers, trying to encourage them to eliminate, you know, the use of or selling products that have these types of dangerous chemicals on it. Can you share with the listeners this new information that you've just, you know, released or came out today?
Yeah, breaking news. So, you know, through our Mind the Store program, you know, we focus on different chemicals that are viewed to be as most hazardous and persistent from a public health and environmental perspective. So for a number of years, we've been campaigning, calling on retailers to reduce and eliminate PFAS chemicals, the forever chemicals, which are commonly found in products like food packaging and clothing and furniture, extremely persistent toxic chemicals that can be dangerous at low levels of exposure. So over the last year and a half, we've been running a national campaign calling on REI, the nation's preeminent outdoor retailer. REI is different than many other companies. They're a co-op. They have millions and millions of members. And we've been working with REI customers and members and environmental health groups from around the country over the last year and a half to call on REI to take a leadership position on this issue, to phase out and ban PFAS. And just yesterday, actually, late yesterday, REI announced a new policy. They're committing to banning PFAS in all of the textiles that they sell over the next couple of years, which is a huge win for our campaign and huge win for consumers nationwide. As a company that is a real leader in the outdoor industry, this is going to have a massive impact in driving PFAS chemicals out of products like raincoats and hiking pants and other textiles that they sell.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, congratulations to your efforts. Also, obviously, congratulations to REI for taking a stand in the industry. You know, they're typically viewed as an environmentally friendly, conscious conservation brand for the outdoors. And it sounds like they're putting their money where their mouth is in a way. And doing that, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. It took a fair amount of encouragement and advocacy, I will say. I mean, we first reached out to REI on this issue a year and a half ago in September 2021, and unfortunately, it took a year and a half for the company to get to this point. But we're really excited with the result. You know, over the last year, over 150,000 REI members and customers have signed petitions urging them to act. So it took a fair amount of nudging, but the good news is REI is really taking a leadership position, joining other companies in the outdoor industry by announcing this new commitment to phase out PFAS in the outdoor apparel and textiles that they sell. And also cookware, which is interesting, which wasn't something that we were focusing on so much in our advocacy and communication. So we're really excited. And we hope that other major retailers also join REI to take action. We're now turning our attention.
I can think of a few big names that, you know, come to mind that are in the same market as, you know, REI. So, yeah, I mean, and they're super, I think one's in Maine, so they're super friendly to the environment as well. So let's see if they will jump onto the bandwagon here and start to do, you know, take the same stance. That's great.
Yeah, we hope so.
I mean, okay, so this market transformation program, it gets started, but you guys publish as part of this program a retailer report card. Let's talk about that, because I was going on your website, and for those listening, it's toxicfreefuture.org, and you can peruse the website and really kind of look at all the stores that they've actually graded, which I thought was fascinating, and I really thought this was really great. So talk about this report card, how it works, how you guys evaluate, you know, these retailers, and a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. So we've been putting out the retailer report card for, gosh, over 5 years now. The report was first published back in 2016, and we steadily expanded it over time. And essentially, we look at which retailers are leading and which retailers are lagging when it comes to addressing harmful chemicals in their products, packaging, and supply chains. We grade companies on publicly available information, looking at questions like, do they have a chemical policy? Do they have a list of chemicals that they restrict?
Right.
Have they made progress in reducing harmful chemicals? And so we grade companies across a range of criteria. We share the grades with them in advance before we put out a report, giving them an opportunity to respond, to say, hey, look, we're doing this or we're doing that, or actually, we're not doing so well, but we're going to improve. And over the last number of years, we've seen how this report card can be utilized to drive improvements in the retail sector.
I think, yeah, I really liked it. I mean, the big names and the logos that are on this report card that you can, select, and you're just like, hey, let me see how these companies do, and you grade them. They're graded from maybe basically an A, B, C, D, and an F score, right? Simple, easy to understand, grading process. And I like the trend analysis that you show as well. Like, the companies last year were this, and they either stayed the same or they dropped down or they improved. And so I really think that was really great, showing that. And then what I felt was really great was the fact that you had the different areas that you're evaluating, from policy, from accountability, from disclosure, from, their transparency, the chemical footprint, all those things. Right. And then you had a little bit of some extra credit, which was nice.
Yeah. So, we've identified what we view as kind of what are the, what are the best practices in terms of companies developing and implementing safer chemical policies to reduce their toxic chemical footprint. And so we've developed these criteria, and then we grade the retailers across these about a dozen key criterion. And then we award a certain number of points and then a letter grade for how companies are evaluated. We've really seen that this can really encourage companies to improve, right? No one wants to get a letter grade of F or a D or even a C for that matter. And we've seen over the years that by publicly evaluating the retailers and grading them through this report, it's really helping to drive improvements. For example, the first year we put it out, we evaluated 11 companies. The average grade across the board in 2016 was a D+. 5 years later, in our most recent assessment, they improved from a D+ to a B-, which was a huge jump for these companies. And these are huge companies like Walmart and Target that really can play an important role in reducing chemicals of concern in their supply chain.
I really enjoyed when I read through it, the explanations that you guys wrote about your assessment of the company and what you found, giving a little more context to why you actually provided the score and the grade you gave them. I thought that was pretty important because, I'm curious, how have the retailers responded to these report cards that you send out to them?
Yeah, generally, I would say the responses have been relatively positive. For many companies, they've seen it as almost like a gap analysis of, what are they doing well, and where are the areas in which they can improve in the year and the years ahead. And it really gives them insights into how their competitors are behaving in this regard and where they could make improvements to further improve consumer product safety and improve the chemical sustainability of products and packaging that they sell. And we've seen since we first started grading companies that many companies have taken significant action. So for example, when we first graded companies like Amazon and Rite Aid and Sephora, all three of those companies, none of them had a corporate chemical policy in place. Since we started evaluating, all three of them have developed corporate chemical policies. They've developed lists of chemicals they're working to restrict, reduce, or eliminate. And they've all made pretty substantive progress in reducing their chemical footprint, which has been really exciting. So it's been a really powerful tool to not only encourage retailers to improve, but also share information with investors and consumers and members of the media on which retailers are leading and which retailers are lagging when it comes to addressing chemicals of concern in their products and packaging.
Yeah, I mean, you look through this and you go through this list of, there's been a lot of information around like McDonald's lately. I think I guess some concerns about their packaging of the food, right? So they haven't really, well, they did increase a little bit from last year to, into 2021, they went from an F to a D. So they improved a little bit.
Yeah.
Then you go and you look at some of these other ones.
Yeah. I mean, some companies are, scoring better than others. McDonald's, prior to our previous assessment, actually had an even lower grade. But since we put out the last scorecard, McDonald's, to their credit, actually announced that they're phasing out and banning PFAS chemicals in their food packaging globally by 2025, which was a huge commitment. I mean, McDonald's is, one of the biggest fast food chains in the world. And so that is having a really important and significant impact in reducing the presence of PFAS chemicals in food packaging. So even though they didn't score greatly in our last assessment, I think we're actually working on the 2023 version of the report card right now as we speak. And I think McDonald's, their grade will actually likely go up as a result of their progress on PFAS.
I spent a couple months last year in Europe and, visited several McDonald's. Okay. What I noticed, the difference between there and here in the US was that their food packaging is a lot more eco-friendly, not as much plastics. They're really making an impact, I think, or taking the initiative in Europe right now, more so, I think, than I've seen here in the US. You don't even get straws with your cups of Coke when you order it in at least in the store. And they have the like little sippy cup lids on it now where it's just a hole, and kind of like, I think, so like you would find at like a Starbucks cup hole. They're changing the way they're doing it. It seems like there's some good progress happening. It just it needs to be deployed across their entire franchise networks, which that's got to be a pretty big challenge. There's like, how many hundreds of thousands of McDonald's are there in the world? I mean, that's a big situation to supply, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like turning around a giant tanker in a small canal. It's not an easy feat by any means. But yeah, I mean, they deserve credit. And, we're actually seeing a growing trend among major food retailers. It's not just McDonald's. In recent years, other major fast food and fast casual chains like Starbucks and Burger King have also announced policies to phase out and ban PFAS chemicals in food packaging. In fact, since we started focusing on PFAS in food packaging, we've won commitments from over 20 major food retailers who have adopted corporate commitments to phasing out and restricting PFAS, which we're really excited about. And we're now working to leverage this policy momentum that we're achieving in the marketplace, as well as in the states, to encourage Congress now to finish the job. We actually had bipartisan legislation introduced last year that would ban PFAS in food packaging. It didn't quite make it to the finish line, but we're hopeful that in this year we can. Yeah, we're hopeful that this year we got really, really close. It was really
conversations
close.
There now, right? It's in the minds
conversation
of the
is
people.
There. Absolutely. So we're hopeful that we can bring that to the finish line in the year ahead. And one of the things we've seen with this campaign is that as we win more commitments and encourage companies to improve, that can really help build momentum for common sense policies at the state and the federal level to protect communities and consumers from harmful chemicals. And that intersection between corporate policy and governmental policy is kind of core to our campaign and core to our theory of change.
I can see that. That totally, makes sense. One company I'm looking at Apple, they're A+. These guys, they look like they really have really put their commitments into practice.
Yeah, Apple is an interesting company. Like, 20 years ago, or maybe it was about 15 years ago, some nonprofit organizations like Greenpeace ran a campaign calling on Apple to green up its supply chain. And since then, they deserve a lot of credit. Apple has actually shown real leadership in not only reducing and eliminating chemicals and materials of concern. For example, they've shown leadership. They were one of the first big electronics brands to remove PVC plastic from their materials. They were one of the first to get out of brominated flame retardants. But they've really gone a lot further than many other brands and retailers by one, requiring full material disclosure. So really working with suppliers to understand what's actually in the things that they utilize on their supply chain. And then also, to their credit, not only, making real progress around disclosure and transparency in phasing out chemicals and materials of concern, but also working to ensure that substitutes are safer, using tools like the green screen for safer chemicals to evaluate the hazards of alternatives. So yeah, Apple is the top scoring company in our scorecard, and they've been one of the top scoring companies ever since we've included them. And their policies and practices can really, I think, serve as a model for other retailers in terms of how do you address chemicals of concern in your products, packaging, and global supply chains.
And I think they also do a really good job of, managing their byproducts too, and how they, recycle things, or, try to be more sustainable as a company. So I think they're really driving into those, which kind of leads me to another question around your report card. You really talk about the chemical footprint and how environmentally impactful that is, or how they manage that as a business. And there's so many great, areas you're actually discovering or reviewing. But man, have you thought about adding another couple categories, like, their ESG categories? Or, I mean, you're so close to just, this could be like, you would be like a major rating group if you had a little bit, just another couple of categories. I could imagine, like, what's their sustainability program look like? Do they have a good program in place? Are they meeting ESG goals? I mean, you're already dealing with chemical manufacturing, and you're already touching on some of those type of policies.
Yeah.
Have you thought it through, maybe adding?
Well, I mean, the way that we think about this is somewhat in alignment with what you were saying, which is that, we think that chemicals management is a core tenet of any retailer or brand's sustainability or ESG program. We don't think it's separate. We think that it should be an essential element of a company's sustainability program. 20 years ago, I think when most companies thought about sustainability, they thought about reducing waste, or
just recycling
savings, or recycling. Right.
Yeah.
But, in today's world, a growing sustainability trend is that chemicals management is a growing ESG topic that is core and essential to any company's sustainability program. And we are actively thinking right now about how we can improve and expand the next iteration of the scorecard criteria. And we're actually going to be releasing the next version of the criteria in about the next month or so. So listeners should, go to our website, retailreportcard.com or toxicfreefuture.org, sign up for our email list, and we'll be sharing information about the next iteration of our criteria. I think a lot of your listeners would be interested to see how we're improving and expanding the criteria to drive further improvements among these major retailers.
Yeah, a lot of investors are looking to get this type of information in their hands before they decide, I want to buy, shares into a firm, right? And sometimes this information is not easy to get a hold of. And for the layperson, it's really challenging. And to be able to to be able to go onto your website, click on one of these, logos, and have some criteria that's, been vetted. It's got some good, rigor behind it. I just think, having like an ESG functional component, do they have a good, zero waste policy? I mean, stuff like that would be huge to benefit to the addition of the report card, at least from my perspective, and who am I? I'm just the host here. So, but,
yeah.
you
Well,
know, as
yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned investors because that is definitely something we've heard from many investors in recent years, from faith-based investors to socially responsible investors to even more mainstream investors. They're looking for this type of information about how companies compare and contrast around major sustainability challenges like chemicals management. We also hear from consumers, and that's one of the reasons why we'll often put this information out. For 4 out of 5 years we've published this, we put it out in November in advance of the holiday shopping season, so that when consumers are shopping for their loved ones and their family and the friends, they can make more informed decisions about companies that they may want to support based on how they rank in our annual retail report card.
That's great. I mean, if you guys start getting more of that information out into the market and posting on LinkedIn, I mean, like myself and others, I'll reshare and, and get that out there. So that's fantastic. And we can maybe come back and have a separate follow-up just to see what's new. Like that could be another good conversation, right? So
yeah, I would love to do that. Yeah, we should be putting out the next version of it. We don't have the exact date yet, but we're aiming to put it out by the end of the year, most likely in early to mid-November. So yeah, let's definitely plan for that. And once the next iteration of it is out, let's definitely set up another meeting and podcast interview, because I'd love to share kind of what's changed, what's new, which companies are now leading, which companies are lagging. Years past, some companies haven't done so well, landing themselves in the toxic hall of shame. So we're hopeful that some of those companies will no longer be in the toxic hall of shame. There were 12 of them last go around, 12 out of 50. So it'll be interesting to see who has actually made meaningful improvements since the last go around.
Well, they ought to get like some sort of a award for, making those major improvements. Like, hey, let's give them some encouragement here, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, in the if you kind of poke around in the report card, you'll see we have analysis on who are the leaders and who are the laggards. And one of the things we've done in the past is to highlight who are the most improved retailers, either since the last iteration of the scorecard or since we first started scoring them. So, for example, since we first started scoring retailers since 2016. Sephora, who I mentioned before, they are the most improved retailer since we first started grading them back in 2017. When we first started grading them, they earned a D, which isn't so good. And that was in 2017. 4 years later, in 2021, they earned actually one of our top marks, bumping up to an A. So Sephora is a really great example of a company that in the beginning wasn't really doing so well, sadly, but over the years have really made great strides in developing a policy, creating the internal infrastructure to implement it, and working with their suppliers to drive sustainability improvements. They've recently, just this past year, reported some really impressive metrics in working with their suppliers to reduce chemicals of concern, and also to help investigate and identify alternatives, so that they're not only saying to their suppliers, hey, here are some bad actor chemicals that we'd like you to work to reduce or eliminate, but here's information about alternatives that can help you sell more safer, more sustainable products. So this year we should again be identifying the most improved retailers. And that's something that we like to do with the report card. It's not just about highlighting those that aren't doing well, but we really like to give kudos and credit to companies that are showing real leadership when it comes to addressing chemicals of concern in their supply chain.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. What is it like, Mike, working with some of these industry leaders when you want to try to sit down with them, or do you get the opportunity, actually, they invite you in and, hey, tell us what you guys are actually doing and how we can improve? I mean, do you get to that level of conversations with some of these industries?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we meet with retailers on a weekly basis. Not all the retailers, but we're meeting with different retailers on a regular basis to share information with them on what are chemicals of concern that need to be on their radar, what alternatives are out there, how are other retailers, how are competitors addressing these issues, what does the science say around some of these chemicals? And then also, what are the trends in the policy arena? Because for many companies, they will want to get out in front of and get out ahead of the regulatory curve, right? They don't want to have to scramble if some state or some government is all of a sudden proposing restrictions or regulations on them. So many companies see the benefit in understanding, okay, here's what's coming down the pipeline. Here's what's important to NGOs and the scientific community. And this is really where we need to be leaning into in the years ahead to get out in front of these regulatory risks that we may soon face if we don't manage our chemical footprint.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. So they're fairly receptive to inviting you in and getting a better understanding of what you guys are trying to accomplish with your campaigns and I'm assuming you're providing them resources like some alternatives to chemicals, but are there other things you're helping them with, like policy documentation that they may be? I mean, because sometimes companies they're not there yet. They don't really have like a full-fledged program that's, that they need to have. Do you have resources for them at that level?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've worked with a number of major retailers to help them craft a corporate chemical policy, work with them to develop initial list of chemicals of concern, work with them to set clear quantifiable goals with metrics to reduce chemicals of concern, and share with them resources on information on how other major brands or retailers have tackled similar challenges, sharing information with them on alternatives to chemicals of concern, safer alternatives that they can transition to by working with their suppliers. So we do try to be solutions-oriented in our engagement with retailers, and I think that has really paid off really well. Since we've launched our program back in 2013, over the last 10 years, when we first launched this program, most major retailers here in the US we were engaging didn't have chemical policies. Most of them didn't have lists of chemicals that they're restricting. We're doing little to nothing on these issues. And over the last 10 years, we've seen transformative change in the retail sector. I mean, today it's becoming increasingly mainstream for companies to have corporate chemical management programs in place, not just that are focused on regulatory compliance, but getting out ahead of regulatory compliance, developing comprehensive chemical policies, because companies will recognize that, sadly, the federal government has not done enough to regulate harmful chemicals like PFAS, and retailers see the need for them to do a better job to safeguard their customers, because their customers, moms and dads across America are asking them, hey, does this shampoo contain phthalates? Does this food packaging contain PFAS? Does this TV that I'm buying in my home contain toxic flame retardants? They're being asked these questions from their customers. Yeah. So retailers really see the value that an organization like ourselves can provide, and providing guidance for them on, the path to improving and addressing their chemical footprint.
So you kind of leads me to this next question. What are you doing anything with, government agencies to shape legislation right now? I mean, is there anything in that space you're doing?
Absolutely. So, we work, we have offices around the country. I'm based in New York, where we have offices in Washington, D.C., Washington State. Sadly, change at the federal level is slow. I mean, we actually got national legislation passed in 2016 when President Obama was still president. And that was a reform of the Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, which is the preeminent law that regulates chemicals in commerce. So that was a major piece of legislation we won. Frankly, EPA has been much slower than we would like in terms of implementing it. But we are working to encourage EPA to do as much as they can to implement that law as Congress had intended. But we also think that we can make even greater and more transformative change in the marketplace and also in states. So on the state side, in Washington State, where we're based, Washington State has really been a leader in terms of developing and passing laws that do a much better job of protecting American families and consumers from exposure to dangerous chemicals like PFAS. I mean, we've had a lot of success in Washington State over the last 40 years since we've been founded to pass meaningful legislation, common sense legislation, protect folks from harmful chemicals like PFAS, for example.
Yeah, Washington's been always kind of one of the more progressive states in that regard. So
Yes.
that's good to know. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the partners that you work with to support the mission, and how important are they to you guys? And one comes to mind because I had one previous guest on the show that's I think that was been on your website, Emily Donovan with Clean Cape Fear. So tell me a little bit how partners like that and nonprofits that are partnering with you guys.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked me about that. That's a great question. I think we're unique from some other organizations in that we work very collaboratively and in coalition with many organizations around the country. We work collaboratively with communities that are directly impacted by chemicals production and disposal. So Emily Donovan and her organization, Clean Cape Fear, has been a great partner. We worked with her, for example, on the PFAS campaign I mentioned to get companies like REI and McDonald's to ban PFAS. We work with not just community-based organizations, but we also work with many state-based organizations and states to enact similar policies to ours, like we do in Washington State. So working with groups in states like California and New York and Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, and others, Minnesota, Rhode Island, to try to work on similar legislation, because we find that if we can get multiple states to pass the same or similar legislation, that can help lift all boats. And then we also work in partnership with other national organizations, especially on our Mind the Store campaign. So for example, with this REI campaign I mentioned earlier, for example, we worked with groups like NRDC and Consumer Reports and Breast Cancer Prevention Partners to encourage REI to take a leadership position. So we really value the partnerships that we have with other nonprofit organizations. And if you go to our website, toxicfreefuture.org, you can see a list of other organizations that we work closely with to advance our mission to protect public health and the environment.
No, that's great. That's really good. Well, Mike, I think, the mission you guys are on to bring more awareness to toxic chemicals and products that are in consumer products for, to try to help eliminate that and for the use of them for the consumers who don't know that they're there. I think this is a great mission. Really appreciate what you guys are doing, at Toxic Free Future and what you're doing with Mind the Store and this program of, the retailer report card. I really, really love that. I think, you're doing a fantastic job with that. Keep up the great work. I'm excited to see what the new report card is going to look like when it comes out. And
stay tuned. Mark your calendars for November.
Yeah. Maybe the week should have. Maybe there's going to be a kind of a party for the people who have really made a turn for the better, right? I mean, that'd be kind of neat to see. Give them an award or something. I don't know.
That's a great idea. Now that gives me things to think about for sure.
Yeah, like, hey, Toxic Free Future, Mind the Stores, best improved retailer award of the year or something. That could be a really fun thing for people to receive and just be acknowledged. They did something great. I
like your thinking. I'm going to put that to some thought for sure.
Well, let's do this. How can people get involved if they want to get involved to help support, Mind the Store and Toxic Free Future? What can they do?
The best thing you can do is to visit our websites, toxicfreefuture.org and retailreportcard.com. A simple thing you can do is to sign up for our email list to stay in touch. We send out a regular email with information about how you can get involved to safeguard American communities from exposure to dangerous chemicals. Another thing you could do is to share the retailer report card with your friends and family on social media channels like Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, whatever one that you're on. That's a really great way to spread the word. So 1, go to our website, sign up for our email list, and 2, share the retail report card with your friends and family. That'll be a great way that we can help encourage retailers to be more responsible and help to continue to drive chemicals of concern out of products and help transform the marketplace to a safer and healthier future for tomorrow.
I could think of two more. Buy from the retailers that are really, you know, have good scores on your report card, right?
Yes,
because they're making, you know, support them. And then two,
right.
You can share this podcast interview when it gets out to all your friends as well, so we can get the message out to more people. I think that'd be great.
Absolutely. Those are great suggestions.
Well, Mike, hey, it was really great to have you on the show. Looking forward to getting this out to the ET Nation and to all the potential new listeners, and looking forward to you sharing it with your network as well. And thanks for coming on the show today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right.